The following program is made possible with support from the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation.
Welcome to Science Goes to the Movies, a look at the stories of science and how they change our culture. I'm Heather Berlin.
And I'm Faith Salie. We're going to be reviewing current movies, TV shows, and sometimes checking out a blast from the past, but from a scientific point of view.
Today, we're going to look at Hollywood's view of scientists.
This is part 2 of a two-part conversation with Neil deGrasse Tyson. Let's jump right in. We've been discussing the movies The Lazarus Effect and Kingsman, The Secret Service, and what they say about Hollywood's view of scientists. We're just about to talk gadgets.
I'm a geek gadget guy.
They had like a whole orgy of technology in this film, you know, so...
What was interesting to me is that some of the more interesting battle scenes, if I can call them that, did not involve high technology. It was an umbrella and an emptied mug of beer. I like people being calmly badass.
Yeah.
In a British fashion, without breaking a sweat.
Yeah, you can't. How could you not like that?
So you know, movies love gadgets.
Oh yeah.
And
Gadgets are science and technology.
Yes, exactly. So why do movies love gadgets but fear science?
Maybe we're cool with gadgets because we control them.
That's what I was going to say. Because it's the
my gadget.
controllability. Yeah, I have it, I control it, and it helps my life.
Yes.
But the science that's out of our control, and we don't know where it's going to lead to.
That's got to be it.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking.
Okay,
We're on
solve
the
that
same
question.
page. Yeah,
Right.
that's
Next question.
Right
Yeah, come on. Keep up with the thing. So it's really then about control.
Yeah.
Real or perceived control over a power.
Yeah. And
That's
why
what's scary
about scientists.
in Kingsman with the Valentine character, because
Yes.
he's giving everybody gadgets, and you think, oh, this is my smartphone, right? We call them smartphones.
So that he gets in that way.
Yeah, that's what's so
Exhibiting
scary.
a power beyond where you think you're in control,
Right.
but in fact it is he.
And we're so
controlling
dependent.
you.
We're so dependent on these gadgets now that if somebody evil takes control of them, we're just, at a loss. It's scary.
Yeah.
So in some movies, the perception of science is much more frightening than the actual reality of scientific advances. That gap is very well described in the movie Particle Fever, which, in case you missed it, is the 2013 documentary film tracking the first round of experiments at the Large Hadron Collider as it tries to prove the existence of the Higgs boson.
100,000 computers deal with the data. In fact, the World Wide Web was invented at CERN so that physicists could share the data.
This is really my generation's only shot.
There was a moment in the documentary when people outside the scientific community feared the LHC might create a black hole that would immediately eat the Earth. And the scientists in that movie said that's not going to happen.
This was a real fear in this community, and the scientists weren't afraid. Should they have been? Does it matter? Was there any scientist who was scared of what was going to happen?
No. Well, because here's the source of the fear. The point of these colliders, and who have an awesome image of it, it's the largest machine ever built. And this is just one cross-section of it, of a huge ring. So what you have in particle physics is, the interesting thing about physics is there's very little left on a tabletop to discover in the world of physics. And because we've been there, we've done that, it's accessible to us. Discoveries in the physical sciences, I can't speak for the biology, but it's probably also true at some level. Certainly in the physical sciences, if you create a machine or a telescope or a microscope that has access to size scales or energy scales in the universe that no other machine has had, you're going to discover something. A microscope that sees smaller than all previous ones. A telescope that sees farther, that sees more detail than ever before. A particle accelerator that accesses scales of energy never previously breached. If you do that, you are in a new zone in the cosmos.
What you're saying is so exciting, because it's not whether there are things to discover. It's that they're out there. We just have to figure out how to get to them.
Every previous time we've done this in the scientific community, we've discovered something new. So You send up Hubble, look what we discover. Electron microscopes were better than regular microscopes, look at what we discover. Particle physics, going into a regime never before breached, you will discover new things. So when you go there, people say, at these energies, might you create a collapse of space-time continuum and create like a black hole? And black holes like to eat and grow. And so you can say, all right, let's do the calculation. And you say, okay, no, it probably won't happen. All right, so you say it probably won't happen.
Wait, scientifically speaking, that was true? There was a probably? Nobody could say it's not going to happen?
Well, there's always a distribution of things that can happen.
Okay.
So you can say it is so unlikely as to not need to concern anyone. But here's why we would know it best. The universe is the greatest particle accelerator of them all. We have cosmic rays coming in from deep space of energies vastly greater than anything we have created inside that machine. If Earth were to become a black hole, it would have happened billions of years ago, and it would have happened by the forces of the universe itself. You would be seeing planets dropping out as black holes all across the galaxy, and we don't. So whether or not you believe my calculation, I've got cosmic evidence to show that this is not something we need to worry about.
I think the point is that the fear of the general public or non-scientists, usually scientists have thought about those possibilities 100 times over.
Oh, yeah. I have an observation I'd like to share.
Yeah.
Because I do a fair amount of the reading of the history of human thought as it intersects scientific discovery. It's a side hobby of mine. As I've done this, I look at a discovery in science at a time, and sure enough, in the 10 or 20 years that follow it, there are creative storytellers who talk about that science gone bad. Then people grow accustomed to it, there's no longer a fear, and then they wait for the next scientific discovery to come up. At no time has science ended the world. Ever. Ever. So I ask you, Madam Neuro Babe, right? What compels people to lead with the worst, even when there's evidence to show that previous occasions where discoveries were made never became the worst?
People are very strongly driven by their emotion, and sometimes as much logic as you have doesn't supersede that. So, for example, vaccine fear. Okay, there's many studies that show you shouldn't be afraid, yet people's fear response kicks in. Fear of the negative, what if, but what if, but what if? And the films that...
But how is it we could make civilization at all if fear trumps logic? How do we even do anything?
That's a very good
Yeah. Get back to the lab.
I
need an answer to this.
That's because I don't think over the course of time and over humanity, fear doesn't trump logic over time, but it helps us survive. I mean, if we are worried about
survive
the
in the moment.
In the moment, yeah. I mean, it's something that evolved for in the moment that now is being, it's sort of like we have a caveman mind in the modern world.
Right.
And so a lot of these programs are running in us that are helping us survive, you know, when there's like a bear there or a lion, but they're not they're mismatched to what's happening in our current environment. And so I don't think it's I mean, obviously we wouldn't have gotten this far if the mechanism didn't work, but we know that we're not Spock-like creatures. That's not adaptive either, to have no emotion.
Moment of silence for Leonard.
Yeah, let's just do the little...
I'm trying. There we go. Oh, you got both. I don't
two?
think I can do both hands.
Of course. Okay.
You know, as great as that character was, we know that emotions inform our decisions. They make us better decision makers. They make us navigate our environment in better ways. So the fact that we have certain fear responses is, I still think, a very good thing. But I think Hollywood and movies, they play on that, and they you know, amplify it and play on people's initial, like, small fears. They become huge. So there might be a small fear that Hollywood makes all these films about, and now it becomes this huge thing.
Amplified fear.
Exactly,
and then we just have to get over it, basically.
Yeah, which is
It
hard.
seems like it's a cultural catharsis, right? I mean, not a lot of people know the real science, and then everybody goes to the movies to see what you know, imagination has done with the science.
Yeah.
It scares us. And then we all, like you said, we all sort of wake up and say, okay, we're all still
Then
here.
we climb out of that hole.
Yeah, and
get
move
ready
on
for
to the next
time.
thing. As scientists, are there things in science that scare you?
I have. I go.
No, let me hear yours. Yeah.
Yeah.
True confessions. Go.
I like right away. Like biological warfare. So like things like smallpox that have been eradicated, but someone in a lab somewhere could create something even worse. And if you see films like Contagion or Outbreak, virology is very scary because once something that dangerous gets out, it's out of control, right?
This is Planet of the Apes.
Yeah. It's that scares me. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah,
You're not scared by that?
A deadly virus being created in the lab. What scares? Is anything scary?
I'm hard to scare, actually.
There's nothing. All right, then fine. If there's nothing in science, nothing scares you?
No.
He's supremely logical. That's what
No. What scares me? What scares me the most? And this sounds rehearsed, but I swear to you, it is deep within me. What scares me the most is it's the fear that we as a species are not wise enough to protect us from ourselves. As an educator and as a scientist, that scares the hell out of me. I look at our capacity for wisdom and the power of our technologies, and I look at it either being squandered, used for nefarious goals, or just being rejected out of hand. And so I don't want the tombstone of Homo sapiens to say they weren't smart enough to figure out how to survive their own idiocies. I don't want that to be on our tombstone. We would be the laughingstock of aliens in the galaxy. I want to be able to stand up proudly and say, look at the life here on this planet. Zork. Whoever I'm saying it to. Look, we did good here, all right? We figured this out.
We were good. We just got killed by a virus that wiped us all out. It wasn't our fault. Damn scientists.
And one thing about viruses, there are people who say, one of the things Hawking suggested, by the way, sometimes I wish he wouldn't talk so much, because no matter what he says...
It sounds scary.
No.
Because of that
Every
voice.
time he says something, the press comes to me. Can you comment on what Stephen Hawking said?
really?
I said, can I have a vacation, Steve, please?
Stop talking.
Stop talking. Give me like a few months, off for this. So one of the things he said was, we need to be and he's not the first to say this, but his voice is loud when he speaks. And people pay attention and they write about it. That we should be a multi-planet species so that your eggs are in more than one basket. So that if a virus takes us out here, or an asteroid, the species can continue to move forward. And that makes a good headline, but it is completely unrealistic. I'll tell you why. Okay? If we're going to terraform Mars and then ship 1 billion people there to live, and now we say we're a 2-planet species, whatever effort it took to terraform Mars and ship 1 billion people, it seems to me is a bigger effort than curing viruses or deflecting an asteroid or fixing Earth. People say, we're messing up our atmosphere on Earth, let's go to another planet. But again, you have to terraform that planet. Well, if you have the power to terraform another planet,
Fix your own.
you have the power to terraform Earth back into Earth. Yeah. So the practicality of shipping people to other planets doesn't seem to work in the equation that I'm imagining that we would invoke to decide to fix the problems here on Earth. That's how I view it.
Cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah, it's a cost-benefit analysis. And who doesn't want to live on who doesn't want to go to another planet? I'm good with that. But not so that the species... And suppose what happens? Suppose we're on 3 planets and an asteroid's coming to 1 planet. What do the other 2 planets say? Bye! Nice knowing you!
You drew the short straw.
Yeah, you drew the short straw. No, that's not how you run life. So we're glad we're saving the species. No one is thinking that way. As organisms, we want to save the individual. That's how we think.
Neil, have you been in a situation where, put it this way, where you've scared somebody? I don't mean by your formidable size, but have you ever had a conversation with someone who needed to be talked down from a fear of what you study? I mean, you deal with huge questions, and are there people who are afraid of what you know?
I do this all the time. All the time. Okay? And so 2011, I'm at a party. And there's a man who, at the party, I'd never met, but he learned that I was an astrophysicist. He came up to me and said, "You an astrophysicist?" I said, "Yes." And he says, "Tell me, I heard that next year, 2012, the world is going to come to an end, and that the sun is going to explode, and Earth is going to tip off its axis." And then he was like very concerned. And so I have to talk him off the ledge, just exactly as you described. So I said, well, first of all, solar max was not until 2013, not until 2012. And this alignment that you're talking about with Earth and the black hole in the center of the galaxy, that's happened countless times before. No reason to think this would be any different. And I just go through this. Do you realize when I was done with him, he walked away dejected? It's as though his meaning for life was fed by the fear and the reality that life would not be here a year later. And when I told him it would be, it was like he's only happy if he's sad. He was only, it's as though knowledge or expectation that the world was going to end was giving meaning to his life. And when I took away this force, he walked away like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? How am I going to align
I have to file my taxes?
I know, you got it.
I guess I have to watch my cholesterol? Well, there have been, I mean, this is a common idea. There have been multiple essays and probably PhD dissertations written about the fact that, you know, sometimes the fear of the day translates into genre, film of an era, right? And you mentioned Them, the movie about ants that you talked about.
In fact, not just Them, but the film Godzilla.
Yeah.
Practice that. Right? Godzilla.
Hi.
And others of that era, those films all portray mutated animals as the result of us entering the nuclear age.
But it's also like when the fear of like automation happened, there was all these early robot films, or like when the Russians...
Robots gone out of control.
Yeah, or Russians beat us into space.
Cold War stuff.
Yeah, and then there was all these like outer space movies, and so it really...
Plus, half of the James Bond movies of the era involved American-Soviet conflict or friendship, whatever, and competition in the nuclear age and space race.
We've talked on the show before about the portrayal of women scientists in movies. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that there's certainly latitude to have more of them. And there are places where female scientists are not uncommon. There's certain TV shows in CSI and in NCIS. Some of the lead characters in those are scientifically trained women. So the exposure of this, what's the word? The trope? Is this? Is I think there's a start, all right, where the first steps have been taken, but there's plenty more room to go.
Well, even, I mean, the Lazarus Effect, the lead scientist was a woman, right? Interstellar, we have the, Anne Hathaway was a Contact, Jodie Foster's character.
Right. That's what I'm saying. We have dipped our toes in that water before. And it's interesting that you mention that, because if you look at the black community, there's a fascinating recurring trope. I like my new word, trope. There's a fascinating... I've seen it since Mission Impossible, the first run of Mission Impossible on television. So many movies now have the tech guy as being black. Just think it through. Just think about it. Not
Interstellar.
Yeah, just the tech guy is black. Even when they're diabolical, they're black. So in Die Hard, okay, the guy who cracks the safe is black.
Oh, what about just this film, Samuel L. Jackson's character, Valentine?
Yes. It's an interesting trope.
But why do you think it is?
I don't know. I mean, it might be Hollywood's attempt to say, you know, to make up for Step and Fetch It and, you know, decades of portraying blacks in very non-intellectual ways. And so you can put them in this way, and maybe it's payback. I don't know. No, but Hollywood is not without power, is my point. And here's the thing. What you really want, which I think has happened in that context, is to show people in those roles with such frequency that it doesn't even get noticed. You didn't even notice that.
Right.
That's how you know you've arrived.
Right.
That's how you know you're there.
Yeah.
And you don't want it to have to be the headline. Oh, a black person is portrayed as a tech a tech person, or a woman is portrayed as a scientist. Oh my gosh, let's write an article about it and interview her and ask her questions about what it's like to be a woman. If it's just there and it flows, you're in a new place.
How do you think that reverberates through the community?
I don't know. You know, she's the expert on brain, you know, people's reactions to
What it does
to stimulus.
I just think that we have these unconscious biases, which makes sense because we have to use heuristics all the time. So if you don't ever tend to see a woman,
Define what heuristics are.
well, we use shortcuts all the time
Shortcuts.
because if we had to process each individual stimuli, it would be overwhelming for our brain. So it's, again, adaptive to make these approximations and sort of make averages about things and tendencies.
You can make a decision faster than it would otherwise take.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so we have these, we call them biases. So, for example, if you rarely ever see a woman as in a scientist role in Hollywood or pop culture, or a black person in a tech role, you're going to assume naturally that they're not going to be a woman or a person of color. But the more we start seeing them in everyday lives, just like even, you know, gay relationships that we see all the time, now it's no big deal. When we would hardly ever see it and was kept, you know, in the closet, it really, you know, so now just simply having these figures in pop culture breaks down these unconscious biases.
I'd like to think it does. And just last night I saw one of the Oceans movies, Oceans.
I was just thinking
25.
12 or 13, I forgot.
The tech guy is also a black
the
guy.
guy who introduces the electromagnetic pulse, he's also black, right? He's not just the person who's picking pockets. So it's an interesting kind of unwritten tradition. Ever since, like I'd say, from the 1950s or 60s, I've seen this.
Now, Neil deGrasse Tyson probably has a very busy schedule. But if you had free time to write a movie, what movie would you write?
Here's a movie I would so write. I'm ready to do this, except I don't know how to write movies. It's a small problem.
Okay, we can work around that. Give me the elevator pitch. Neil.
Okay, no, it's easy. You ready? And it sounds like it's been done before, but it actually hasn't. There's an asteroid headed towards Earth. It will render us extinct. Okay?
That's been done, I think.
No.
That one, been there, done that.
Well, since when has... Wait. I still have to describe what makes it different. But since when has a storyline, having been done before, prevent that storyline from being touched once again?
It doesn't. Obviously.
Excellent point.
Yeah. No, we don't need another buddy cop drama. No, you do.
Romeo and Juliet, that's so played
It's
out.
so played out. Boy meets girl. Parents
Romantic
don't
comedy.
approve.
Come on. All right, so there's an asteroid
But what's
coming
the
towards
twist?
Earth.
Okay. Asteroid's going to come. It's going to render us all extinct. This is far enough in the future where technological abilities are a little more distributed around the world. So watch what happens. War is about to break out on Earth. You just create whatever scenario that's not too hard to find a way to get people to want to kill one another. So World War III is about to break out on Earth. And then we discover this asteroid. So what do you want? You're going to fight each other to have a single winner, or you're going to bring everyone's technological prowess to bear on deflecting that asteroid to save us all. And deep in there, you can explore the geopolitics, the interpersonal, the technology, the science, is the enemy of my enemy my friend or my enemy? The asteroid is everybody's enemy.
Yeah.
I'm fighting you. Now we join together. And now I can't do this alone. I need this weapon you were about to invoke on me to deflect that asteroid. And so all of the inventiveness that had been brought to bear in a military complex now becomes that much more inventive to save the world.
Do you hear that, Hollywood screenwriters? Now's your chance.
That's
Yeah.
And you get to explore that on every level, scientifically, technologically, astronomically.
religiously, socially.
Religiously.
All the things that drive people apart that could bring them together.
And it brings us together, and it could be the only force that brings us all together in the end, is the fear of death for us all.
Or imminent demise.
Correct.
You just titled it.
Wait.
Oh, that's it. Our imminent demise.
We got the
All right,
title. We got the
cooking with
thing.
gas.
Wait.
Let's cast
Are
it.
we going to get royalties on
Cooking
this?
with gas? Cooking with thermonuclear fuel here. What are we cooking with gas?
Sorry.
What kind of 1890s comment is that? Cooking with gas. What were you cooking with before
I
gas?
studied Victorian
Wood?
literature. I'm not a scientist.
You were rubbing sticks together? What the hell were you doing?
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah,
It's been
thanks for having me.
fantastic. Yeah.
And when your movie is the biopic of Neil deGrasse Tyson, whom do you want to play you?
Oh, Denzel Washington, I think.
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
Yeah, Denzel Washington.
I like it. With a lisp or no lisp?
No.
Thank you so much for dropping by.
Thank you. Thanks
Neil.
for having me.
This has been fascinating.
I want to come back again one day.
Oh, yeah.
Please do.
Okay,
You're
good.
always welcome. Next time on Science Goes to the Movies.
We'll be joined by journalist Ira Flato. We're going to look at the Swedish film Force Majeure and Jon Stewart's directorial debut, Rosewater. Don't forget to check us out on the web at www.cuny.tv under the Science tab, where you'll find past shows, additional content, and a link to our app.